Get ready for chills and thrills at Hometown Haunts and Hops Horror Convention here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Join us for a spine-tingling day of horror-filled fun on October 28th at the Mayflower Brewing Company. Meet horror actor Matthew G. Taylor from Resident Evil and dive into a macabre world of cinema and literature. Sip on chilling brews, indulge in ghastly treats, and immerse yourself in a haunted atmosphere. Whether you're a horror buff or just seeking an unforgettable experience, Hometown Haunts and Hops has it all. Don't miss out on the eerie excitement. Secure your tickets now by heading on over to Inebri-art.com. Go to our events calendar, and in October you will find the link for Hometown Haunts and Hops, which is sponsored by HalloweenNewEngland.com. HalloweenNewEngland.com is the website for the truly Halloween obsessed, with the most extensive guides to New England haunted houses, ghost tours, classic horror film screenings, jack-o'-lantern festivals, haunted hayrides, and more. They've got all the thrills covered throughout September and October, with over 2,500 Halloween events on their events calendar and hundreds of local Halloween attractions. It's the only place you'll find everything from haunted history tours and costume contests to which haunts are open on Thursday nights. HalloweenNewEngland.com has your Halloween covered and is sponsoring Hometown Haunts and Hops this year. Welcome back, Inebri-art. This is your host, Andy, as always. We've been on a long string of assorted actors and writers and musicians who I didn't know ahead of time. Today's guest is a little different. I actually follow today's guest on TikTok and have been enjoying his content. Michael Corrie of Props to History. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. How do you do?
I'm doing great today. It's funny. I think the algorithm sent me your channel because I'm a big Adam Savage fan, and I'm like, okay. Oh my god, he's just like Adam Savage. And then lo and behold, Adam Savage was on your channel. You were on his. So props to history. You're a prop master. Is that the correct term?
Yeah, I am a prop master and prop maker and special effects artist in the TV, film, and theater industry. As of late, because of the strike, I've been doing a lot more stage work. But I actually got started doing work on the stage, doing prop work and set design and set decoration, probably 10 years ago as sort of a side gig. I'd always really wanted. I never set out to work in theater at all, because I was an aircraft mechanic for almost 2 decades before I did this, and it's a bit of a strange career transition. And then when I started posting to social media, like so many people, it went nowhere, and it was just sort of a part of the hobby until one day it stopped doing that, and then I started getting hired for work on shows like Magnum PI and the film Babylon, and it's sort of steamrolled since then. And then, of course, the strike brought all that to a screeching halt. So back to the theater it is. Yeah. So right now I'm back to working theater for now until the strike ends. But yeah, it's been a weird career change, but it's still, a lot of people don't realize it's fairly new for me. I've not worked full time in the industry, but maybe 2 years.
Oh wow! So it's super new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't like I said, I didn't set out to do this for a living. It just sort of happened, and it had always been something I had wanted to do on the periphery, but it was not something I ever thought I could pursue. And the weirdness of social media actually made it happen.
I love that kind of like organic way things evolved. I mean, it's very much how, I always say anything we do is always by accident, because someone comes up and be like, hey, do you know what you should do? And we're like, well, that sounds like fun. Let's give that a try.
Sounds
And
right.
yeah, and then it just becomes like another thing that we do. You mentioned the strike, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show.
Mhm.
Is you were one of the first people to come across my feed that was um, not just supporting the strike, but explaining it. Because one of the first things, my first questions I had, I hit up our editor and was like, "Do we have any actors, lined up already recorded?" Because I'm like, I'm not sure if we can put those out. So that kind of, I can't remember if you or someone else addressed it, but some people ended up addressing it. But
Mhm.
so as far as why is Adam Conover so mad?
Well, Adam Conover, he's a writer. He's a
Yeah.
member of the WGA. He's also done acting work. I'm not sure if he's a member of SAG or not, but um, WGA went on strike for a great many reasons. One of the biggest ones was the use of AI to replace writers. The number of writers that could be hired or would be hired on a production, and the biggest issue, the biggest driving force behind this, is residuals when it comes to streaming,
Hmm.
because a writer puts in their time, puts in their effort, puts in their work to create, to use their imagination and their talent to create these shows. And then when they're streamed, which a lot of stuff is streaming, the studios keep all that money. They don't pay them.
Right.
Whereas if it was released in a traditional sense, like on NBC or CBS or one of the networks, they would be paid residuals. And the last writer's strike, if you'll recall that, is really when residuals became a very strong thing. But during that, streaming was still very new, and it was called new media.
Hmm.
And they said, well, we don't know how to figure it out for residuals, but it's all new. And at that time, streaming was pretty much just like how to's and vlogs. It really wasn't what it is today. And it was a good faith agreement that it would be revisited in the future, that if there was streaming shows that came along, that writers would be paid. Well, the billionaires that are in charge and the AMPTP have basically said, fuck you guys. We're not going to pay you a dime. We're going to keep all that money because we're dragons and this is our hoard of gold and we're not giving it up. And it became such a matter of contention that the strike happened. And then it was very similar issues with the actors. When the Screen Actors Guild went on strike, it was a matter of replacing actors with AI. They wanted to replace background actors with AI entirely,
Hmm.
which is utterly draconian and archaic. It's just absolutely ridiculous that they wanted to do that, to own a background actor's image in perpetuity and pay them for one day of work and then put them in as many shows as possible and then not pay actors residuals for streaming. So it's really come down very heavily, and it is of course not the only issue,
Sure.
of actors, writers, professionals not being paid for the work they're doing on streaming, essentially allowing the AMPTP and these other studios to make enormous amounts of money off their work and not pay them for it. And then and all we see are these out of touch billionaires saying we're going to starve them out, we're going to make them lose their
Lose their
homes.
houses. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all these absolutely ridiculous twisty mustache villain esque things of cutting down trees and tearing up sidewalks to break the strike, and not doing it months down the road, doing it right away
Right
when
away. Yeah.
everybody's
Yeah.
feelings
Hmm.
are right up at the top, everybody's super angry, and all it's done is essentially pour gasoline on the fire. And it just shows how unbelievably out of touch these billionaires are that are running everything, thinking, oh, poor people only have enough money to survive a day. And it's like, fuck you guys. We're going to stay on strike until you get fired for the stock price dropping, which the stock prices for these companies has been plummeting because of all this. And
Yeah.
the reversal of Bob Iger coming out and saying, oh, I'm all for ending the strike peacefully now. My guess is that came about because the stockholders of Disney said, hey, you fucked up. You need to sort this out now.
Yeah. It,
So
it
there's a
it's
complicated issue, but
it's funny. I didn't realize that they had like in good faith said, "Hey, if there's new media stuff, we'll get that sorted out." I didn't. I just was under the assumption that it was like one of those they didn't foresee that and was kind of like, well, if they don't ask for the money, we're not going to give it to them, kind of thing.
Well, it was at the time, I think, when the first writers, well, the writer strike before this,
Hmm.
that led to the rise of reality TV and stuff like that. I don't think anybody quite understood how big it was going to get, and I'm sure there were people that saw it coming, and maybe they planned for it that way. But there's zero excuse to say, oh well, we used to pay you guys this way with
Right.
residuals. We're not going to do that now because why should we give you any money? We have 9 homes to pay for. And while people are struggling to pay rent and pay for food and survive in one of the most expensive economies in the country,
Hmm.
in California, with very high cost of living, it's unforgivable, is what it is. It's just this, like, use the term again, this twisty mustache, like Snidely Whiplash esque, like, villain that
Yeah.
is cartoonish in its way, and it's not going to go well for them because the folks on strike aren't showing any signs of slowing down. We're at 100, I think today, 107 days into the WGA strike. The last one I think lasted 100 days, and a lot of us are pretty much like, "Yep, this is going on till past the first of the year."
Oh,
So, like,
really? Yeah.
yeah, there's, you know, David Zaslav of Warner Discovery, he came out and said, "Well, it's going to end by September," because he knows things. He doesn't know how to run a studio, that's for sure, and he certainly can't keep it solvent. But apparently, he knows what's going to happen with the strike, which he's wrong, because folks like myself and folks like Adam Conover and Fran Drescher, the head of SAG, and all the other folks that are out there striking, they're not going to back down, because if they back down now and they kowtow to the demands of the AMPTP, no one will ever make a living again.
Yeah.
They will absolutely twist that to make sure that no one ever makes a living again. And IATSE, the union that I'm a part of, their negotiation comes up in the spring, and if the strike is going on to that point, you guarantee IATSE will probably go on strike,
Right.
and then followed by the Teamsters, and then, I mean, you see everyone going on strike in California in solidarity. Hotel workers are on strike. The sanitation workers in Los Angeles are going on strike. Everyone, the city is shutting down because
Wow.
of billionaires wanting to just keep their money and screw everyone else over. In the city of Los Angeles, I think the last time I looked at it, they're losing $31 million a day
That's
in
crazy.
revenue.
Yeah.
And eventually, the government may try to step in, and hopefully, they don't do to the Hollywood workers what they did to the railroad workers, which was force them to accept terms. Um, it's it it's a mess. It's a
Yeah.
huge mess brought on not by what a lot of people have been propagandizing as a bunch of whiny actors wanting more money. It comes down to a bunch of, well, not a bunch, about 10 billionaires who want to be greedy.
Yeah.
And it's I see, like, mainstream media going out of their way, like, with just carefully worded headlines, to blame everything on the writers, and to blame everything on the Actors Guild, and to blame the unions for all the troubles and trials that are happening. But they're owned by the same billionaires who,
Right. So they're not
are
gonna bash
they're
them.
not going
Yeah.
to say that, oh yeah, no, it's these rich fucks who don't want to come off a couple of dollars.
Yeah.
They need to have 25, they need more money than they can spend in one lifetime for some reason.
Yeah. And the worst part is I feel like people who don't really follow what's going on look at, and I'm not trying to say he's not supporting the actor strike, but someone like The Rock can be like, well, what does he need more money for? He's a millionaire, but it's not. It's the Joe Schmo, it's the background actor
Yeah.
that can't afford to go in one day and then never work again.
I'm friends with a lot of actors, a lot of people who are actors, who are members of SAG, and to just get, just to qualify for insurance benefits, you have to make $26,000 a year, and most of them don't do that. In fact, the vast majority of the actors that I'm friends with, they don't make that much money. They work maybe once a month if they're lucky for one
Mm-hmm.
day. and they have another job. Acting is a second job for them. And most of the membership of SAG, that's a second job. Being an actor is a second job because the top tier A-list actor make up maybe 1% of SAG.
Yeah.
So those people that are making millions of dollars, they are the outlier. They are the exception. Whereas the vast majority, those who have another job and can afford to strike until the cows come home, they're not, acting is not their primary profession. And it's that so many people think that, oh, actors are just a bunch of whiny millionaires. The number of millionaires that are actors or actors who are millionaires is tiny compared to the number of actors who are just working stiffs like the rest of us.
And I'm sure that case in the example of the writers is even more drastic,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know some people that they get on a TV show and they write every episode and then they move from season to season to season. That does happen. And you have writers that are, they work and they write 1 feature, 2 features a year, and they make enough to survive the year. But that's not the vast majority of them. A good portion of them, they might write 1 piece a year or 2 pieces a year that get picked up. And even then, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make enough money to survive that month. It's just dependent on the rates and everything else. And the vast majority of writers and members of the Writers Guild, again, a lot of them have gone on to second jobs. I myself, I can't guarantee that this work in the theater is going to pay the bills. So I'm falling back on the trade that I came from. I'm falling back into maintenance. So I'll go back to work. I'll write out the strike until it's over.
Yeah.
I don't care. I will love to watch the sinking ship that is the AMPTP collapse because a whole bunch of shareholders get angry at the loss of money, which they are, losing an enormous amount of money. Warner Discovery, Zaslav, in a shareholders meeting said, we saved $100 million because of the strike. Well, it is essentially the saying that I saved a lot of money on healthcare by never going to the doctor, or I saved a whole lot of housing expenses by burning down my home and living in a box. It's a lie to try and placate these shareholders, but it also screams of desperation to me. And I could just be talking out of the side of my face here, but I consider it to be a positive when I see these people making these outlandish, moronic statements, because it says to me that they're terrified of what's coming. Yeah. And what's coming is them being unemployed.
And the worst part is for them, it doesn't matter. If they're unemployed,
no, they'll land on their feet. Yeah, they'll land on their little silver cloud.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But perhaps maybe they'll be replaced by somebody who realizes that unions are very strong. The unions have an enormous amount of power, and the unions can and are shutting down Hollywood. And if anybody in Hollywood in the upper tier wants to make any money, they're going to have to keep the union happy.
Right. And I tell you, the thing, and this was well before, as far as I know, the strike was ever thought of, but the thing that made me think twice about what they can do was Rogue One. When they had, I wish I could remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but Palpatine was in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, they can put anybody in any movie.
Yeah.
Because it was done so well. And it was just kind of like, you don't, I'm assuming his estate got proceeds from that, but who knows?
Yeah, I know that for with Carrie Fisher and oh my goodness, Peter Cushing, I think was his name.
Yeah.
When they brought him back, that their estates were paid for that, but that's the exception to what they want to do. They want to just completely and utterly replace actors. They want to completely and utterly replace writers, which I don't know if they've thought this through to the ultimate ending of when that technology gets to a point where it needs to be, or where it can be, is that someone will create an app that AI generates you a movie, custom generates you a movie, and then we don't need the studios
anymore. Yeah.
And then they lose everything, because why the hell would I pay to go see a movie when I can download this app and type in what kind of movie I want to see and it creates one for me?
Right.
You know, that is the ultimate end goal there. Or what, you know, the ultimate of what it could become is someone going, I don't need the studios anymore. Screw you guys. Then Hollywood disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And then all these billionaires go, boo hoo, where's my money? What happened?
Yeah.
They brought it upon themselves. That is,
Wasn't
of course, the extremist of it, but
Yeah. Wasn't someone doing that with like Seinfeld? Like they were doing like AI
I believe
generates.
so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so. Yeah. I mean, we're headed that way anyway.
Yeah.
But the film industry is enormous, and it directly employs and indirectly employs millions of people
Mm-hmm.
across this country and in other countries, and it it would have a serious impact on the economy if the film industry all of a sudden
Just went away.
disappeared and it
Yeah.
was, you know, all of a sudden it was just 50 people making all the movies in the world. You know, you need the creatives in this world to create film and to create the film industry and the TV industry. And the importance of it, I think, is often understated by those who are, you know, that are against anything for pro strike, that are that are anti-union people. Excuse me, because I don't think they realize how much of an impact the film industry has on our society and on our economy and on people's day-to-day lives. And all they want to look at is, oh, they're just whining and crying. They just want more money. They're greedy. Like, no, it would be a huge impact on an enormous amount of people's lives if it were to go away.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. That's crazy. Um, on a better note, how's the Ursula costume coming?
We have all of the tentacles installed. We'll actually be doing a powered up test.
Yeah.
Hopefully by tomorrow, and then it'll be down to skinning it, putting the outside skin on it, which is actually made out of a scuba knit neoprene, to give it an almost shiny look to it.
That
And
could be
then,
super hot. Not like any cosplay costume isn't.
well, all of them are uncomfortable by nature. But this one will actually have two fans in it that will pull air in.
Mhm.
It has a venting system that pulls air from underneath the costume, just along the edge of it, the cool air, closest to the ground, and then pulls it up into the costume. And then there's a fan that actually ejects the hot air. So it has an intake and an exhaust to pull out. It's primarily to keep the electronics cool.
Yeah.
But it will benefit in helping keep my wife's lower body at least slightly less horrible, because I'm sure that she'll be sweating like none other in that thing, because it's essentially a tent.
Yeah.
So, but with a metal frame.
Was it cosplay that got you into making props? Is that?
No, it was model making, actually.
Oh, okay. Right.
I've been a model maker my whole life, and my dad got me into the hobby, and I became obsessed with movies and movie models. And that progressed into me learning as much about that as possible, which in the early days of the internet, there wasn't much to be had. So it was whatever library books I could find. And being a kid growing up in the Midwest before the internet was really a thing, it's very hard to find information about Hollywood. So it slowly progressed in from me making models to me trying to replicate the models I saw on screen, to me trying to replicate the props that I saw on screen. And then with more information becoming readily available, wanting to learn more about the how and the why of props, and more importantly, the who, the people that made them. And then all these fun little stories that exist around them. And these interesting places where they're created, like Earl Hayes Press or History for Hire or ISS Props, or any of these, the thousands of smaller fabrication shops all over the world that do this stuff for film and TV. And it just became a hobby. That became my fandom. Special effects artists, prop makers, prop masters, art directors, designers. That stuff interested me more than actors did, than directors, than even the films themselves sometimes. And one day I decided to talk about it online.
And it just took off.
Yeah, and then it was one video was all it took. I posted one video, and then that exploded. It went viral, and That's that, as they say, is that. Here I am, what, 2.5 years into it now, and I mean, a lot of my social media has stagnated. A lot of it does, but I went from working as a blue collar skilled tradesman, a fact that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of being a skilled tradesman. But also, I went into an industry I never thought I could be a part of because of social media. So I mean, if this is as far as I ever get in my career, just working as a prop master, just working as a prop maker in the industry, I'm not going to cry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things like I wouldn't think you're Chicago based, right?
For now, yeah.
Yeah. That someone in that area would be able to be part of that industry because I'm like, well, what's in Chicago? But then, like here in Massachusetts, I'm sure there's more of that industry than I realized because there's quite a fair number of movies shot out here.
There are, yeah, and it's not as common as it once was here in Chicago. There's a lot of productions that are in Chicago, but not as many as there once was. And I'm just moving out to California when the strike ends.
Yeah.
So because that's where the work is.
Sure.
So, and I have made so many friends out there at this point. I'm already very connected in the industry now I'm more than I ever thought I would be. So it's an easy decision for me to move out there, so long as there's work, which of course I have to wait till the strike is done for that to happen. So for now, I'll just go back to work and turn wrenches for a little while and then see what happens.
Nice. You mentioned Earl Hayes Press, and I think that was like I'd seen your channel, and when you got into the Earl Hayes Press stuff, I was fascinated. Like I couldn't, like I'm still waiting for like more videos to come out, and that's when you shot with Adam Savage and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
What an amazing location, and
it's sort of a one of a kind place. It's been around for 107 years, working the film industry the entire time, and they've really not gotten rid of anything. So you just have shelf after shelf after box after box after box filled with treasures from film's history that in a lot of cases haven't seen the light of day since the production. Because they made stuff at it, they would make stuff for film and then you wouldn't know if that movie would become a classic or not. They had no idea that this license plate would have such an impact on pop culture. So they just made the stuff, and when they were done, they put it on a shelf and they moved on to the next job. So that it wasn't something that they kept track of.
Right.
Like all the stuff.
It was just their job.
Yeah, it was the job. It was their job, their day-to-day job. It wasn't, all of the things from Ghostbusters are on this shelf. No, it was wherever there was space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been shuffled around 100 times since then. So there's no organization to it, but they didn't ever need any.
Yeah.
They didn't expect the popularity of movie props and film ephemera to blow up in popularity like it has, and people wanting to own pieces of classic film like Ghostbusters or like Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are two pieces that I pulled out of the archives at Earl Hayes Press. It's the Ecto-1 license plate from Ghostbusters, and then the cover for Ooh La La from Back to the Future. Like these are.
Oh yeah, I'm like I couldn't even tell what that other one was.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me take the camera up there a little bit. But these are originals.
Yeah.
That were pulled from Earl Hayes Press, and they just gave them to me because they're like, whatever, we don't care.
We have like 9 of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the case with a lot of stuff, like this letterhead from Bigelow Aviation.
Yeah.
That's Rocketeer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Bigelow's Air Service, where the fuel truck gets blown up. That kind of stuff is everywhere, and to the everyday person, no one really thinks about this stuff as being a part of film. We don't really see it on screen, but that's Die Hard.
Nakatomi Plaza,
yeah. That's the original letterhead from Die Hard that was made for the production, and I've only found it on screen once.
Oh, that's crazy.
But they made thousands of these pieces, and it just it goes into the, helping tell the story of how much detail goes into a movie. And Earl Hayes is really the last of their kind that still exist from back in the earliest days of film. They were working on movies before Hollywood was known as Hollywood.
Yeah.
They were working with two guys named Harry and Jack Warner before anybody started calling them the
Warner Brothers, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So they were best of friends with Harry Warner, and Harry Warner used to hang out at Earl Hayes all the time because him and Earl were buddies. So
So crazy.
yeah, and there's these direct connections all over the shop to the earliest days of Hollywood, and that golden era of Hollywood, which has its own obscenely dark side to it, but those connections to that romanticized idea of Hollywood are still there because of Earl Hayes Press. They're physically there because of Earl Hayes.
And
And
you found something from Casablanca. I mean,
found several things from Casablanca.
Is any of that stuff like earmarked to go to a museum of some kind?
Well,
that's like a historic piece.
The issue with museums is that museums want it for free. They don't want to give Earl Hayes anything for it.
Yeah.
And that sounds materialistic, but they're a business.
Right.
That are struggling because of the strike. So that there have been some overtures from a couple of museums that would love to get their hands on it, but they're like, we can't pay you for it. Well, okay, museum, give me some of your stuff for no money.
Right. Yeah.
And see how that works out. You're going to say no. I understand why museums do that. It's because they don't generally have the funds to make huge purchases. But if people offer it as one thing, but just sort of coming out and asking for it for free is kind of a weird thing, to me at least, especially from a company that's trying to survive, like so many others are in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. There's so many of these smaller shops all over Hollywood that are concerned, and rightfully concerned, not knowing if they're going to make it through the strike. Because, you have places that have shut their doors entirely. You have a few that have gone entirely out of business. And you have others where the owners are just kind of closing up shop and waiting to see what happens and not knowing, and then folks like Earl Hayes, who, they're still doing some work for smaller projects, music videos, commercials, stuff like that. But it's just, they're barely kind of scraping through. And
this is only 3 years after COVID shut everything down.
Yeah, because COVID hurt them and they were just starting to bounce back. And then this. And which is why stuff that I found while I archive Earl Hayes, they're going to be selling it all off.
Yeah.
To the general public. People will be able to get their hands on it. Partly because, let's be honest, they need the room. Mm-hmm. That place is stacked to the floor. Stacked floor to ceiling with movie props, and they're just sitting there not doing anything, and it's just kind of new old stock, so might as well get rid of
it. I mean, you even told a story about, was it the flux capacitor blueprints that you found stuffed in a vent or something?
Yeah, that was actually one of the pressmen there. His name was Ralphie. I love Ralphie. He was just doing some cleaning and noticed that there was no air coming out of a vent. So he pulled the cover off of it, and apparently someone had thought the air coming out of there was too cold. So they just stuffed some paper down in there, and what they'd stuffed down in there were the blueprints of the flux capacitor. And that's how it survived, because somebody needed to block a vent.
Yeah.
But there's tons of stories like that. There's, what was it? One of the Ghostbusters magazine covers, one of the production made magazine covers. They were pulling some stuff down from a window that had been covering a window. Mm-hmm. And underneath layers of newspaper, just taped up onto the window, was one of the original magazine covers from Ghostbusters.
So weird.
That they just used to block light.
Yeah.
But back then they didn't care about this stuff. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
There was no, huge following. There was no massive fan base. You didn't have things like Alberta Ghostbusters and Windy City Ghostbusters, these fan groups that are absolutely obsessed with everything Ghostbusters. You didn't have that. So no one really cared. So they were like, we need something to block this light. This magazine cover will do.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So and it's hard to think about things that way. It's hard to countenance that now, but
I mean,
that was
it's
just the
like
way it was.
if like you're an accountant and there was just this scrap piece of paper and you used it for some purpose to stuff events and find out later that that's the key accounting information that led to some big historic thing. Like like you just don't think
Yeah.
about it because you're just like, well, this is just my job. Like this, like it kind of
No, and there's
loses.
instances like
Yeah.
that. We found one of the newspapers from Citizen Kane,
Oh,
and it
shut
had a
up, really?
food order written on it. Yeah, it had a food order written on
Oh, that's crazy.
it. Somebody was ordering like Chinese food, and they were getting everybody's order, and they just used this newspaper to write it down.
Oh, it's so funny. And
Yeah,
it's
that'll probably get framed
yeah.
at Earl Hayes because that's part of Earl Hayes' history right there.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like I have to do it to my business partner all the time is like you're so focused on what you're doing work wise that you forget sometimes that what you do is atypical for work. And I have to stop him every once in a while and go, you know, we're at work right now, right? And he's like, I know, it's so strange. We got to run an event 2 weeks ago on a paddle boat. It's like the sunset cruise, and it takes us like I don't know, hour setup time ish, and we get people going doing their art, thing, and then we get to wander around a paddle boat and see the sunset behind like this classic lighthouse, and I'm like, this is crazy, you know, like they're paying money to be here, and I'm getting paid to be here. It's just this weird, you know.
I've had so many similar experiences like that. I was filming on the deck of an aircraft carrier,
Oh,
and
that's cool.
it just sort of dawned on me like in between takes. I was like, I'm being paid to be on board an aircraft carrier, and that's and then I get to leave.
Yeah.
you know,
I'm
I'm
playing
like,
pretend for a living, kind of.
yeah, no, I'm like, I'm standing here talking about an aircraft carrier that was that served in World War II and all the way up through Vietnam and all that. I had a kamikaze run into it and just had all these take part in all this history, and I'm standing on the deck of this piece of history, and I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
What a strange job I have.
Yeah. Yeah, we for one of our other podcasts, we got to record a ghost hunt in the oldest wooden jail cell in the country. And it's in
Interesting.
Barnstable, Mass. And it literally just looks like an old barn. But inside is like carving that some of the prisoners did like while they were there. And at the time, they just put everybody like men, women, children, all one jail cell. And there's
Wow.
like all these intricate like carvings, and it was just like you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you have to stop and go, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It survived, and it's been fire damage. There's like whole story behind it, but yeah, it's
I
just
was I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, at the Edinburgh Castle, and they have a door that used to be one of the doors to the jail there that actually held prisoners that were captured at sea during the Revolutionary War. And one of those prisoners carved an American flag, a very early American flag,
oh
into that
wow,
door.
yeah,
And I'm standing there staring at that, and I realized that like somebody who was an American right when that was a brand new thing got captured, probably was from that area or somewhere nearby, or had his dad was or something like that. And here he is in Edinburgh Castle 200 plus years ago, carving the American flag into things because that's what you did, I guess. But it was such a cool like little piece of history right there in that door. And it was also weird to stand in that location and think back to like what that guy did and why he was there and the reasons for it. And now, we go back and forth. The people of the UK come back and forth in here. Like we were at war at one time, and this
yeah,
is an artifact of that. And now we're just like, whatever.
yeah, yeah. My landlady's British.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta, yeah, and I love how much you're like I find your channel like so informative and like really good stuff. And
Well, thank you.
so you
Yeah,
said like
it's a fun job. It's a weird job, but it's a fun job.
Yeah. At what point were you like, okay, this channel, like you said, the first video went viral, but like at what point were you like, okay, now, like, at what point did you feel compelled to make more content as like, okay, this is like a work thing that I have to do?
I've never felt that. I've never felt it that way.
Oh,
I've never sat down and go, I need to make X number of videos in this X amount of time and release them on this schedule, blah, blah. I've never done that.
hmm.
Like I will plan stuff in advance.
Yeah.
Some things I'll plan in advance. I'll schedule stuff on occasion. But most of the videos I put out are stuff like, oh yeah, I remember this thing. I'm going to do a video about it, but I'll get to it tomorrow,
Yeah.
and then I'll do it because I don't, social media is not something I make a whole lot of money at. It doesn't pay my bills. I don't rely on it. Social media is still a thing that I do for fun because I enjoy it. It's not really a job
Yeah.
for me because it doesn't pay well. I make most of my money from either working productions when that's available or from working another job.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people that has corporate sponsorships that send me all over the place. I'm hustling for every dime that I need to try to make doing this. And occasionally I'll make some money doing it, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
So for the most part, this is just a side hustle. It's not something I do full time. The work that I do with Earl Hayes, that's something I get paid for. The work that I've done for other archives, for Preservation Society, for libraries, that I get paid for. That I make money off of. When I work a production, I get paid off of that. But for the most part, the rest of it is me working a regular job like everybody else.
I like that you said that because I feel like, so I told you before we started recording that Inebri-art has been around for 12 years now, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's only been since COVID. I got laid off in COVID and been like, well, if I'm gonna make this a full-time thing, now's the time. And
Yeah.
so much of it is like, okay, you try this, does that work? All right, we're gonna keep that going. Oh, let's try this other. And it's having like multiple streams of income, trying to make sure that everything stays going at the same time. And
Yeah, I don't put that much thought into it. I really don't. Partly because there are certain aspects of it that I don't understand. I'm not going to lie. There are certain parts of social media I don't get. Monetizing things. Some people find it easy to monetize what they do. I don't, because so much of what I do is reliant on intellectual property, and a lot of people are scared of IP, so they won't approach me to do things because of that. And also, most unfortunately, I've been told a couple of times. I've reached out to companies to do representation for people at like movie premieres and stuff like that, and I've been told that I'm too old.
Really?
For that. Yeah, I'm too old. They only want young people at those things. So I'm too old. I had one of them tell me that I look too much like a dad. That's, it's the way of things within the industry. It's all appearance, and apparently I appear too old for that stuff. So so be it.
Yeah.
They just want young people at those things because that's the ideal audience that they're trying to attract, I guess. So whatever. I don't agree with it. I think it's silly, but that's them, and they're the ones that make the decision. So
that's interesting. Yeah, because it's like you always hear that kind of thing in the abstract, but I think you're the first person that I've ever met been like, yeah, they told me I was too old, and
yeah, they're like, you're not. The words they used were, you don't fall into the age demographic that that we're trying to promote to. So, which translates into you're too old.
Yeah, so. For sure. Yeah. But then it's always like, I think that's part of the great thing about social media and YouTube and things like that is you can break those rules and do your own thing and find your own audience.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate that I have found my own audience, that I've found people that are interested in what I have to say. And when I started doing this, I decided right away that I'm not going to jump on every trend. I'm not going to jump on every gimmick. I'm going to tell people about what I like. I'm going to share my nerdery with people. And if they like it, cool. If they don't, meh, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to still share my nerddom, my fandom with people and my way of seeing it. And yeah, I do branch off occasionally, but for the most part, when I'm telling stories about things, it's because I really enjoy that thing.
Yeah.
I really like that piece of that. I like that business, you know. I don't do it because that's the current trend and I'm concerned with going viral. I can't be bothered to care about going viral. I do this because I enjoy it, and I'll continue to do it because I enjoy it. And if it becomes something, then great. And if it doesn't go any further than this, so what? You know, I've enjoyed the ride. I'll
Yeah.
continue to do so.
And I think that passion comes through in your genuine, that, and it reminds me of, I used to own a comic book shop, and my favorite thing was when someone would come in. I hated talking Star Wars, but that's a totally different thing. But when they would come in and you start talking about like whatever bit of fandom they liked, and you kind of had that connection, and everyone's so passionate about what they're talking about, and at the time, my big thing at the time was Firefly, because I just discovered
Oh
Firefly,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
would bore anyone to tears, be like, let's talk Firefly. There's 12 episodes, but let's talk about it.
yeah. No, I'm also a huge fan of Firefly. I remember seeing the when it was first aired and wondering what the hell the show's about because they aired it out of order because they didn't know what the hell to do with the show. I've always been amazed by how much people can get out of 12 episodes.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
how much love there is for 12 episodes and a movie. And
Yeah.
of course, there continuations of the storyline with comic books and
Comic books and
novels
stuff.
and stuff
Yeah.
like. But I'm the same way with things like 40K, Warhammer 40,000. I've been playing Warhammer 40,000 since 1989,
Mm-hmm.
and to this day, I love going on about the stupid minutia of the backstory of 40K, even though it is utterly unimportant. It's important in that moment with
Yeah.
another person who loves 40K. The same with like movie related stuff, anything movie history. I will nerd out about that. And none of that has any import on my day to day life, but I don't care because I love it. And then I try to share that the same way, that same passion, that same love of just this weird little stuff
Mm-hmm.
on social media. And people seem to dig it. So I'll
Yeah.
keep doing it.
I love everything about like the making of movies, to the point where when I was married, I'd be like, "Oh, I just got the Platoon DVD or whatever," and my ex would be like, "You already have that on DVD." I'd be like, "No, no, no, this one has
You
like
don't
three extra.
understand.
This
This
one has
has
three extra
extras.
commentaries and from the
You don't
from the
understand.
yeah from the military advisor. We're gonna watch that one first." And she's like, "We're
Oh
gonna
yeah,
watch
Dale
that."
Die.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Captain Dale Die. Um,
that was a
my
great one.
wife is my wife is exactly the same way, in so much that she's like, "Oh, we've watched the movie. We have to watch it again now with the commentary."
Yeah,
And I will absolutely, let's go. I'm going to go pop some popcorn. Throw down. Let's go. I don't know how many times we've watched the Lord of the Rings extended edition from Fellowship of the Ring all the way to Return of the King with the commentary on the whole time. We've watched it 10, 15 times in the
yep,
9 years we've been together, easily. And we'll probably do it again soon. But that's, we both love it.
yeah.
And we both love those details and the weird little odds and ends that go on in the background. And I love the filmmaking process. It's such an odd, strange world. And I'm quite fortunate to be part of it. And hopefully, the strike will end soon. And in the favor of those that are striking, I'll be able to go back to work and help make more movies.
I'm gonna give you a commentary you should check out if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Pleasantville?
Oh yes, I know where this is going. Yes,
The music director.
yeah, that's
Oh,
actually one of my
so good.
my wife's favorite films, and since you brought that up, this is actually one of the the first pieces that we ever found at Earl Hayes Press that was instantly recognizable, and it's the decal from the side of
God
the fire truck.
up. That is
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah. This is one of the. I
Oh,
think there's only like 7 or 8 of these left,
that's
and
amazing. I
that's
love
one
that
of the
movie.
ones
Yeah,
they made for the fire truck. Yeah,
that's
that
fantastic.
hangs up here in my office.
Nice.
My wife
Um,
has informed me numerous times that that belongs to her.
the um I want to say thanks for taking the time to talk, man. This was a lot
Yeah,
of
not a
fun.
problem. It's been a nice little conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And please keep posting stuff about Earl Hayes. It's endlessly fascinating.
Oh, you know I will. I have all kinds of stuff to talk about. I have some more pieces to film with that I have here at the house, and it's just I feel like that's going to be one of those veins of treasure that it's not going to run out anytime soon because there's just so much there and there's so much to explore. And just getting the word out about it to tell the story because so few people know it exists
Yeah.
or has ever existed. And and I'm in the process of actually writing a book about Earl Hayes Press, about the history of it, and then about the things that have been discovered at Earl Hayes Press, just to add to the story of how a movie is made and the detail that goes into it and the level of obsession that prop makers turn into a prop for film that is only on screen for seconds, but it doesn't matter. But the level of detail that we go to, and that especially the folks at Earl Hayes have gone to make some of these amazing iconic pieces is, I think people would be shocked to find out the level they go to.
Yeah. Is there one bit of movie ephemera that is kind of in the back of your mind being like, I hope we come across something?
Yes.
Okay.
One of them is a newspaper. And I know it was made at Earl Hayes Press. I know that it's their headline, it's their stock paper. It's the newspaper, the only one seen on the screen, like full on front page, from the Maltese Falcon, that announces the murder of Sam Spade's partner.
Yeah.
And we know they made it. I'm pretty sure it's in there.
They have stuff from that era.
No, they
Yeah.
absolutely do.
Yeah.
And the Maltese Falcon is one of my favorite movies of all time, and to find a piece from the Maltese Falcon would be like Casablanca blew my mind. Finding those pieces from Casablanca absolutely blew my mind because nothing was thought to exist like that.
Yeah.
And there it is, all of a sudden, stuck in a folder in a filing cabinet for 80 years, and then but to find some pieces from the Maltese Falcon would be wonderful. And then there's we know Chester Copperpot's driver's license was made there. We know that all the money from his wallet was made there. We know that the Lou Gehrig baseball card was made there because we found it.
Yeah.
We found the original baseball cards made for Chester Copperpot's wallet. And I want to find all of the pieces for Chester Copperpot's wallet because I know who made the wallet. So, because I want to build a replica of Chester Copperpot's wallet. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. To me, the way people are obsessed with something like Ghostbusters, and I love Ghostbusters. I mean, I grew up on it, but something about Goonies, man, like that movie connected me.
It hits different, doesn't it?
It was like the movie where I was the same age as the actors, and it was the first time where I felt like I wasn't being talked down to.
No, and it was. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah,
I was roughly the same age as the actors, and I felt like I was a part of the story, and the story was about me.
Yeah, because you're like, swear like that.
Yeah, we do exactly the same stuff, and I watch it, and watching it today, it takes me back to being a kid again, in a lot of ways. So. And I think folks our age, we all kind of have that same experience with movies like that, like Space Camp. You remember Space Camp?
Oh yeah,
yeah, same thing. I watched that movie and I'm like, God, I want to go to Space Camp and accidentally get inside of a shuttle that accidentally gets shot into space. How cool would that be? And have a stupid robot that shakes its leg. Yeah. That sort of stuff
Jinx, right?
like
Was it Jinx?
Jinx. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I'm
was
like in my head, I'm
Jinx
like
the
half
robot.
listening
Yeah,
to you, being like, "What was the robot's name?"
yeah, I know, right? I
Yeah,
was sitting there trying to think of its name too, but it's movies like that like that got me to love film, because you
yeah.
had those movies at that time that were these very human stories,
Monster
but
Squad, love
also,
Monster Squad.
oh, Monster Squad, scary German guy. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I love that movie. Um,
the
I
amount of times
forgot
me and my
about
friends would just walk around and be like, "My name is Horace."
Horace. Yeah, it's such a good scene.
Yeah,
Oh, Wolfman's got nards.
yeah,
Oh, there's a lot of fun memories there. But and that's the nostalgia of those films is also really great, because we get to think back to all these fun lines and these one-liners that come from these movies, and it just drives my passion for movies that much more.
yeah.
Because I want to be a part of something that someone looks back on and has that sense of nostalgia about.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
and
that'd be amazing. Yeah,
yeah, to be able to work on something like that when I'm working on it, I'm never gonna know.
yeah.
I'm not gonna know until 30 years later if it's become a thing, and by then I'll be an old man. But it
Someone
would
will
be
be,
it'd be
someone will be
cool to just look
amazed, and
back,
you've been like, "I've been using that to prop up my table."
right?
Yeah,
Absolutely. And you know what? That's probably what'll happen is,
yeah.
like, if I end up making something that's hyper iconic, like some, a Maltese Falcon of props, somebody's going to be like, "Oh my God, you made that. Do you know what happened to it?" We keep it in the bathroom on a shelf. Yeah,
Yeah.
because so much of that stuff has survived because of things like that. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the Death Star survived because it was used as a trash can in a honky tonk. So, you
Oh, I
know,
didn't know that. That's an amazing story.
yeah, the original Death Star model, when they were in storage, the production company didn't want to pay for the storage anymore, or the storage company was going out of business. So they just threw a bunch of stuff away. And one of the guys that worked there was like, "This big ball thing, I think it's cool. I'm going to take it home." But he didn't have room for his apartment in California. So he took it to his mom's house in Missouri. And she put it outside of her antique store for like 10 years alongside the highway in Missouri.
Oh my God, that's
And then,
crazy.
and,
So
and then
crazy.
she sold it to this honky tonk, country western honky tonk. And by the time it was recovered from there, it was full of trash and dip spit from being used as a
Ugh.
spittoon. And yeah, but now it's, Gus Lopez owns it today,
Yeah.
and it's immaculately restored, and it's mostly most of the time in the foyer of his house under glass. But yeah, it's survived because it got used as a trash can.
That's
That's a
fantastic.
very simplified story of what actually happened to it,
Yeah.
but it's like, when you tell people that that's how this crap survived, it adds this whole other layer of mystique to these things. Like, there's only one surviving costume of Errol Flynn's Peter Pan, or not Peter Pan, Robin Hood,
Yeah.
and it survived because somebody pulled it out of a dumpster. That's it. That's the
Yeah.
only reason it's still around, is because somebody pulled it out of a dumpster. There's so much stuff that pieces of Hollywood history that survived because of that, because someone pulled it out of a dumpster, or somebody stuck it in a box, or they put it in their lunchbox and took it home, or they just stole it.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that a lot of this stuff survives. And because, up until recently, Hollywood didn't care about props. They would just throw them in the garbage.
Right. It
They
was
were
just,
just excess trash.
yeah.
When a production was done, toss it. Who cares? When Goonies was over, the Inferno that they made almost full size, they sent parts of her off to the Pirates of the Caribbean ride to be restored, and the rest of it they disassembled and destroyed.
Yeah.
But what do you do with something that big? You can't keep
Yeah.
everything.
And that's
So
one of those things is like you take the chance on being like, well, we're going to save all the props from this movie.
good
And
luck.
the movie doesn't even do something as well as Bomb. It just kind of goes down middle of the road and people see it and forget about it. And now
Yeah,
you have
there's
all this crap that you don't need.
and you start to see it now that productions are, for a long time they've been just selling stuff off.
Yeah.
Costumes and props. They've just been selling it off to these auction houses that then sell it off to collectors. But still, to this day, I mean, you have, like, Disney, especially, they're well known for it, that when a production is done, everything has to be accounted for. and everything goes into storage or gets destroyed, and there has to be witnesses to its destruction. They don't want it getting out in private hands. So very little of the new Star Wars films has ever gotten out into private hands, because Disney is so strict about this stuff, because they know what it's worth. They know its value. And they have a very extensive archive that they keep. So in fact, they were one of the first to really start archiving stuff. I think MGM was really the first company to archive its pieces, which led to the massive 1970 MGM auction, and where the world's only pair of ruby slippers got sold. And then a day later, somebody was like, "But I have a pair, and I have a pair." Magically, several other people had pairs of them. So, but yeah, that's a whole other story that would take hours to tell. But yeah, it's amazing how this crap has survived, and telling those stories is fun, which has led to me being here.
That's awesome, man. Well, I hope the strike ends soon.
Same.
And I hope everyone gets back to work. Mostly because I like to watch content, and nothing good is going to come out for a while.
I mean, you'll get good stuff that comes out for a while, but you won't see anybody promoting it.
Yeah.
And anybody that does promote it's a scab. So, I'm like, I am not SAG and I'm not WGA, but I'm not about to cross those lines. No. So you won't see me promoting anything. I'll be doing older film and cosplay related stuff and generic builds and stuff like that. But I can't do anything that promotes newer film, just because I stand with my brothers and sisters in the WGA and SAG.
I think that's where everyone should be. You did mention on one time that people shouldn't stop their subscriptions to streaming services. Is that something that's still...
That's something that the unions haven't asked for yet.
Yeah.
I have made the personal decision to get rid of Disney, because they're hiking up prices and doing the stupid, like, you can't share passwords garbage that Netflix did, and I canceled that when that happened, because I went to streaming services because I was tired of paying for cable TV, and streaming services have just become cable TV.
Cable TV, right? Yeah,
yeah. Because now it's like, oh, there's different tiers with commercials, and it's like, I stream stuff so I don't have to see commercials.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I will pay for streaming services if they're convenient. Mm-hmm. And if they're not too expensive, and if I'm not having to deal with commercials. Otherwise, DVDs still exist, and there's always the bay that holds pirates. So just saying.
I guess we'll end on that one.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe edit that part out.
Okay. All right. The Pirate of the Caribbean sequel.
Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean sequel. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Michael, thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure. It was great to geek out with you. And please stay in touch, and we wish you the best.
Same to you. Thank you for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. And I'm gonna can I plug something real quick?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So here shortly, Earl Hayes Press is going to be selling off its collection of props that I have been archiving. And all of those announcements for that and the websites for it will all be on my social media, particularly my Instagram, which is @PropsToHistory. So if you want to get a piece of film ephemera, film history, like one of these license plates, or the cover from Ooh La La, or something from The Rocketeer, or Die Hard, or whatever, just follow me on Instagram @PropsToHistory, or any other social media. It's all Props to History. I'm a one-trick pony.
Yeah, I mean, people should follow it anyways, because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Yep. Have a good day, buddy.
You too.
Cheers.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.